If you go back and look at what causes the cancerous tendency in the individual, and at what causes a similar tendency in society, we find that underneath are very similar principles. Let's look first at why a cell in the body becomes cancerous. In the center of each cell are the genes. They contain the information that keep you functioning as a single living organism, rather than just a bowl of biological soup. Now, if the genes in a cell are disturbed, that cell may become selfish. It may no longer support the system as a whole, but instead go off, doing its own thing, at the expense of the body. In short, it becomes a cancer. Now, when we consider human beings in a community, we are looking at an organization of minds. And the parallel to the genes is to be found at the center of our consciousness. It's that deeper level of inner wisdom, that inner awareness of being much more than we normally experience, a part of something much greater. And when we lose touch with this inner wisdom, we also become like selfish cells, out of touch with the needs of society as a whole, living at the expense of each other. The philosopher Alan Watts referred to this selfish, isolated way of existence as the skin-encapsulated ego. What's inside the skin is me, what's outside the skin is not me. Biologically speaking, this is, of course, true. We are each separate biological individuals. But it is not the whole truth. We are much more than that. We are creatures with an inner life, with an existence that stretches beyond our biological identity. The reason we become stuck in this limited way of seeing ourselves is because the real self, our deepest sense of I, is actually very hard to grasp. Trying to describe that deeper sense of self is very much like trying to describe a hole in a piece of wood. If you ask people to describe a hole such as this, they may start by saying, well, it's a round hole. You say yes. They say it's a wooden hole and it's red. You say, hang on, the hole isn't wood, the hole isn't red. They say, haha, the hole is black. But no, that's the background. And suddenly they're stuck. What's the hole? How do you describe the hole itself without describing its surroundings? In a similar way, it's very difficult to grasp and define our own inner sense of self. Instead, we tend to describe ourselves in terms of what surrounds us. Our many possessions, the roles we play, our social status. Our beliefs, both scientific and religious. Now, this limited sense of identity may not in itself seem very dangerous, but it does have some far-reaching consequences. It turns out that many of the ways in which we mistreat and abuse the environment stem from our seeing the world as separate from ourselves. We may take fairly good care of what is inside the skin, but we don't care nearly so well for what is outside the skin. As the late Gregory Bateson said, if this, meaning this me versus the world attitude, if this is your estimate of your relationship to nature, and you have an advanced technology, your likelihood of survival will be that of a snowball in hell. You will die either of the toxic byproducts of your own hate, or simply of overpopulation and overgrazing. And Bateson went on to say that if I am right, the whole of our thinking of what we are and what other people are has got to be restructured. The most important task today is to learn to think in a new way. I would actually go a step further and say the most important task is to be in a new way. to experience, to be conscious in a new way. We need to make the shift from this, the skin-encapsulated model of the self, to this, what some have referred to as leaky margins. The boundaries are still there, but they are much less solid. In addition, we now experience a greater oneness with the world outside. Such a shift of consciousness could play an important part in the next stage of our evolution. If we go back and look at the previous major steps in evolution, we can see that each stage became a platform for the next. Energy led to matter, matter led to life, and now life has led to consciousness. Thus the spearhead of evolution is now the human mind. We have moved beyond biological evolution into mental evolution. Thus it is not changes in our bodies which will now determine the future, so much as changes in our thinking, changes in our perception, changes in our attitudes. The evolutionary phase which we have now entered is the evolution of human consciousness. Inner development is now the key. In short, evolution has become internalized. And these changes are happening much faster than we might at first suspect. Recent data shows that inner evolution may soon become very widespread in our society. If we look back at the past distribution of human employment in the West, we see that the major focus for centuries was agriculture. Most people were employed on the land. That continued up until 1900, when a new curve took over: industry. Industrial work became the dominant use of human time. We entered the industrial age. And the industrial age continued until 1975, when a new curve took over: information processing. And we are now very much in the information age. And we entered the information age much faster than anybody anticipated. Whereas it took over a century for the Industrial Revolution to have its full effect, the Information Revolution has had a major impact in just 25 years. So the next question is, what will follow the Information Age? Well, there are already signs of a new curve beginning. And although small at present, it is growing even faster than information processing. This curve represents the growing number of people involved in the exploration and development of the vast resources of the human mind itself. These are the people who are beginning to explore what may perhaps be the last great frontier, our own minds. The number may be small at present, but as you can see, if you extrapolate the trend, then by the year 2000, it will have overtaken the information curve. What we would then see is a very major shift in values, as more and more people discover a deeper sense of unity and purpose, and, letting go of their petty, selfish ways, beginning to function more in tune with humanity and the planet as a whole. Now, the idea that there are deeper levels to human consciousness is not new. In all ages, all around the world, we find people talking of that same fundamental wisdom, that same basic understanding of life and consciousness.